Welcome to you all at this service today. Let our chalice flame be lit for the last time in 2023. May it shine a light into the future. I should explain, I'm slightly raised above you, not because I feel superior, but because last time I was here, I couldn't see the person who was speaking, and it was annoying. So I hope that you can all see me. Actually, you probably would all see me if I'd been down there, but anyway, it depends on how many people are here. After 12 o'clock tonight, the year 2023 will forever be history. Unless, that is, we don't have a change of calendar to say Anno Marx or Anno Darwin or Anno Freud. Even if we did make such a change, we'd have to live nearly 2 millennia before experiencing another 2023. And who knows what might happen in that time. In this service, I'll be presenting 3 possible attitudes to the transition from one year to the next. The first is optimistic about the future. The second is pessimistic, or at least skeptical about what we could expect in the next year. And the third mourns what we have lost. According to the first view, which is prevalent in the West, whatever happened in the outgoing year is now history, and we should let it go. But what will happen in the next could be affected by our resolutions. That handy resource, Wikipedia, has this to say about New Year's resolutions. A New Year resolution is a tradition most common in the Western world, in which a person resolves to continue good practices, change an undesired trait or behavior, accomplish a personal goal, or otherwise improve his or her behavior at the beginning of a calendar year. Those making resolutions in our time generally believe in progress, or at least hope to maintain it. Our first hymn, which is a setting of an extract from Alfred Lord Tennyson's In Memoriam, reflects this hope for a better future. The poem was a eulogy for his close friend and fellow poet, Arthur Henry Hallam, whose death at the age of only 22 undermined Tennyson's Christian faith. Thereafter, he described himself as a pantheist, a spiritual path based on worship of nature. And it was from this position that he dreamed of a better world. We will sing now hymn number 257, Ring Out, Ring In. The year is going ring out the false, ring in the true. Ring out a slowly dying cause, and ancient forms of party strife. Ring in the nobler modes of life. Ring in the banners ring out false pride in place and blood, the slave fixed on an endless fight. Ring in the love of truth and right. Ring in the Roman vow of good. Ring out old shapes of foul disease. Ring out the narrowing lust of gold. Ring out the thousand wars of old. Ring in the 1,000 years of peace. In 2020, Stephen Lingwood published Seeking Paradise, a Unitarian mission for our time. Rooting himself firmly in a particular interpretation of Christianity, coupled with the Unitarian tradition of social action, he maintained that the spirituality of paradise as a core element of faith was preferable to that of the crucifixion. The one was optimistic, the other pessimistic about human nature. He equated paradise with the biblical phrase, kingdom of God, or as he renamed it from a non-monarchist position, kingdom of God. Here's the flavor of Lingwood's writing. I believe that this spirituality of paradise can provide us with a sense of ultimate meaning, can provide us with faith. If paradise is both here and in the future, and in the worshipping community, then I would argue that it is not too much of an exaggeration to see the word as synonymous with what Jesus meant by the kingdom of God. Paradise can be another term, like beloved community, that brings a fresh language to the faith of the kingdom. The good news of paradise is that the world is beautiful, good, and overflowing with the love and grace of God. The concept of the kingdom is more political and points our attention to the need to transform societal and economic structures. Jesus didn't actually use the phrase kinship of God. Mulkuth in Aramaic is the word which Jesus would have used, meaning kingdom, the realm of a king. So Stephen Lingwood should have taken more care on that point, but the thrust of what he has to say is clear and interesting. Our second reading presents the pessimistic view of the future. Alain de Botton was born in Alexandria, Egypt, of Swiss Jewish parentage. Writing from an atheist perspective and calling the 17th century Roman Catholic writer Blaise Pascal to his assistance, he recognized in religion aspects which he believed the largely secular West had ignored to its disadvantage. Among these is the advantage of pessimism. And Christine will read the passage. Oh, good.
Because it was after the hymn.
Hang on a moment. What have I done? I've turned over 2 pages. I'm sorry. Yes. Yes, I've jumped a page. Sorry about this. We've had our first hymn. Right. Our first reading, which I may have used here before, but if so, I don't apologize for repeating it, comes from Alexander Pope's Essay on Man, written in 1733-34. It reflects on the human condition, and in this passage, on the difference between other animals and humans in their attitude to the future. Animals, he says, are blessed with a God-given blindness to the future, which protects them from permanent terror. Humans, cursed by their infinite capacity to imagine horror, are blessed with a God-given capacity for hope in a better hereafter. I will read the first reading. Heaven from all creatures hides the book of fate, all but the page prescribed, their present state. From brutes what men, from men what spirits know, or who could suffer being here below? The lamb thy riot dooms to bleed today. Had he thy reason, would he skip and play? Pleased to the last, he crops the flowery food and licks the hand that's raised to shed its blood. O blindness to the future, kindly given, that each may fill the circle marked by heaven. Hope humbly then, with trembling pinions soar, what the great teacher, death, and God adore. What future bliss he gives, not thee to know, but gives that hope to be thy blessing now. Hope springs eternal in the human breast. Man never is, but always to be blessed. The soul, uneasy and confined from home, rests and expatiates in a life to come. Our second hymn is a happy expression of traditional faith in God's lovingly conceived creation. Hymn number 258, O Glad New Year of God.
Of stars by night revealed, of springing grass, of tender buds by winter's snow concealed. Another year of summer's glow, of autumn's gold and brown, of waving fields and ruddy fruit, the branches weighing down. Another year of what better is than play? Of simple cares and love that grows more sweet from day to day. Welcome from God, O glad New Year, thy path all yet untrod. Another year of life's delight, O glad New Year of God.
Well, I've read you the next bit about Stephen Lingwood and his a little bit of his writing, which I would say supports the modern view of New Year and of progress. We are in a state of progressing towards paradise. And I then said our second reading presents the pessimistic view of the future. And I told you about Alain de Botton and so on. And so we come to Christine, who will read the reading.
Christianity has spent much of its history emphasizing the darker side of earthly existence. Yet even with this somber tradition, the French philosopher Blaise Pascal stands out for the exceptionally merciless nature of his pessimism. In his Pensées, written between 1658 and 1662, Pascal misses no opportunity to confront his readers with evidence of mankind's resolutely deviant, pitiful, and unworthy nature. The very best we may hope to do in these circumstances, he suggests, is to face the desperate facts of our situation head-on. Man's greatness comes from knowing that he is wretched. Given the tone, it comes as something of a surprise to discover that reading Pascal is not all the depressing experience one might have presumed. The work is consoling, heartwarming, and even at times hilarious. For those teetering on the verge of despair, there can paradoxically be no finer book to turn to than one which seeks to grind man's every last hope into the dust. The Pensées, far more than any saccharine volume touting inner beauty, positive thinking, or the realization of hidden potential, has the power to coax the suicidal off the ledge of a high parapet. If Pascal's pessimism can effectively console us, it may be because we are usually cast into gloom, not so much by negativity as by hope. It is hope with regard to our careers, our love lives, our children, our politicians, and our planet that is primarily to blame for angering and embittering us. The incompatibility between the grandeur of our aspirations and the mean reality of our condition generates the violent disappointments which rack our days and etch themselves in lines of acrimony across our faces. Hence the relief which can explode into bursts of laughter when we finally come across an author generous enough to confirm that our very worst insights, far from being unique and shameful, are part of the common, inevitable reality of mankind. Our dread that we might be the only ones to feel anxious, bored, jealous, cruel, perverse, and narcissistic turns out to be gloriously unfounded, opening up unexpected opportunities for communion around our dark realities. We should honor Pascal and the long line of Christian pessimists to which he belongs for doing us the incalculably great favour of publicly and elegantly rehearsing the fact of our sinful and pitiful state. This is not a stance for which the modern world betrays much sympathy, for one of this world's dominant characteristics, and certainly its greatest flaw, is its optimism.
Thank you, Christine. It's actually quite interesting to listen to that being read out. You know, I've read it lots of times, but hearing it spoken does make me think it's very well written and argued. And now for our meditation. Let us ponder on the poem of The Old Year by John Clare, written in January 1845. You'll find the text on the back of your orders of service if that helps you to focus on its meaning. The old year's gone away to nothingness and night. We cannot find him all the day, nor hear him in the night. He left no footstep, mark or place in either shade or sun. The last year he'd a neighbour's face. In this he's known to none, by none. All nothing everywhere. Mists we on morning see have more of substance when they're here and more of form than he. He was a friend by every fire, in every cot and hall, a guest to every heart's desire. And now he's naught at all. Old papers thrown away, old garments cast aside. The talk of yesterday are things identified. But time once torn away, no voices can recall. The eve of New Year's Day left the old year lost to all. We'll now be silent for 2 minutes. Who wants gloom and doom? And of all days, on this one. In the debate between optimists, pessimists, and what I could call lamenters, it's surely a no-brainer. Optimism wins every time. How outrageous of Alain de Botton, or Botton, I don't know, I hear it pronounced different ways, to take a sideswipe at inner beauty, positive thinking, and the realization of inner hidden potential, and to exchange them for pessimism. Does this perhaps qualify as a hate crime, an attack on faith? But hold your horses. Just let's consider the story of Stanislav Andreski, related by John Gray in a talk a few weeks ago on Radio 4 called The Usefulness of Pessimism. Andreski was a Polish officer captured by Soviet forces during the Second World War. He and his comrades were told they would be marched to a place where they would be given food and work. This sounded reasonable and reassuring. But Andreski's inbuilt pessimism led him to doubt such a beguiling explanation. The prisoners were lightly guarded, and so taking the risk of being shot, he escaped. His comrades marched on to their deaths in the infamous Katyn massacre. On New Year's Eve, exactly 83 years ago today, Andreski left Poland incognito, crossed Nazi Germany, and managed to get to England, where he rejoined the exiled Polish forces. Pessimism had saved his life. Credulity had cost his comrades theirs. That credulity was, at least in part, the belief that if there is a rational explanation for something, it's likely to be true. T.S. Eliot pointed out that human beings cannot bear much reality, and so an optimism apparently supported by reasonable arguments may appear preferable to an open-eyed recognition of the truth. Ostriches don't in reality bury their heads in the sand to avoid danger, but metaphorically, human beings regularly do. Are we then to question the value of both reason and optimism? Such a prospect will appear unthinkable to many Unitarians. Now enter John Clare. I wonder what you made of the poem, his poem. I believe he represents the lamenting position about the future. Born in 1793 to a thresher and local wrestler in Northamptonshire, Clare was steeped in folklore, derived from his family and from a certain cowkeeper, Granny Mary Baines. He played popular jigs and reels on his violin and learned hundreds of local folk songs. He also befriended local gypsies who represented for him freedom from law and convention. He identified with outlaws such as Robin Hood, and Jesus-like associated with outcasts such as vagrants, robbers, highwaymen, pickpockets, village idiots, wise women, wizards, and prostitutes. He read widely, was one of the earliest naturalists of Northamptonshire, and from an early age wrote both poetry and prose. He spurned opportunities for a regular career, taking work as a ploughboy and agricultural labourer. After a spell as a soldier in the Napoleonic Wars, he returned home only to face Mary, the love of his life, breaking off their engagement. This was probably caused by her parents taking fright at his unconventional lifestyle and his reputation as a drinker and a womanizer. Instead, he married Martha. These two women became the muses of his life, representing the divergent characters of the two biblical characters of the same names. Mary was idealistic, Martha practical. The high point in Clare's career came in the 1820s when a Stamford bookseller introduced him to his friend John Taylor, who, with James Hesse, had published Keats, Hazlitt, and the Unitarian Samuel Taylor Coleridge. For a while, he was lionized in London, but his fame waned as fast as it had risen. And while he continued writing at a voluminous rate, he earned little from it. Clare had by now 7 children and Martha to support. He became depressed and increasingly delusional, imagining that he was married to both Mary and Martha, and fearing punishment for bigamy. He was a voluntary patient at an asylum in Essex, and shortly after his return from there, he was committed in 1841 to the relatively liberal Northampton General Lunatic Asylum, where he lived the last 23 years of his life. It was here that he wrote much of his poetry, including The Old Year, none of it published until long after his death. I think I'm right in saying that. Clare's rebelliousness was directed towards opposing the social and economic developments he saw unfolding around him. Despite his radicalism, Clare remained a lifelong Anglican, seeing the Church of England as the mainstay of a traditional way of life. In the poem, the previous year is represented as a better past, the new year as the faceless present. Quotes, "The last year hid a neighbour's face. In this he's known by none," end of quote. "We had lost the familiar and replaced it with nothing," he said. "The old year was," quotes, "a friend by every fire, and now he's naught at all," end of quote. It's like old papers and thrown away, old garments cast aside. His damning conclusion was that, quote, "time once torn away, no voices can recall," end of quote. Clare's position bears some resemblance to Robert Burns's famous poem, Auld Lang Syne, which is customarily sung on New Year's Eve. The answer to Burns's question, should old acquaintance be forgot, is, as in Clare's poem, a resounding no. But Clare's poem has a wider application and more of an edge. Should we dismiss Clare's position as pure nostalgia? Rationalists might say that you can't stop progress. But this itself is a non-rational statement. It's an emotional expression of enthusiasm for progress and rejection of tradition. Pascal warned us against such a misuse of reason. Quotes, "The supreme function of reason is to show man that some things are beyond reason. Tradition is one of those things, for it may convey a fund of accumulated and often embedded wisdom." Quotes again, "Reason says John Gray, is like a hammer. It can build and it can destroy. Recognizing this reality might just give us the possibility of controlling it. The proper role of reason is to connect us with reality, not to obscure it, as did those soldiers who were guarding Andreski. And so, as we look forward to the new year, let us regard current fashions of thought with a fair degree of skepticism, and tradition with a fair degree of respect. We have heard three ways of viewing the new year and through it the future, and have seen that the pessimistic position has a compelling case. This doesn't mean that the optimistic and the lamenting positions have no validity. All three have their place, and each acts as a brake on any tendency of the others to become dominant. Our third hymn seems pretty well to cover the whole spectrum. Hymn number 3, Joy of Living.
Sing the joy of living, sing the mystery of knowledge, lore, and science, of truth that is to be, of searching, doubting, testing, of deeper insights gained, of freedom claimed and honored, of minds that are unchained. We sing the joy of living, we sing of harmony, textures, sounds, and colors, to touch, to hear, to see, of order, rhythm, meaning, of chaos and of strife, of richness of sensation, of the creating life. Sing the joy of living, we sing of ecstasy, of warmth, of love, of passion, of flights of fantasy. We sing of joy of living, the dear, the known, the strange, the moving, pulsing, throbbing, the universe of change.
Have you made New Year's resolutions? Or just one resolution? If not, you might like to pay attention to the advice of Father Christopher Jamieson, a former abbot of Worth Abbey. He maintained that resolutions generally fail through a lack of self-knowledge, and self-knowledge inevitably derives from the past. We need to recognize our demons, and in particular, pride and anger, before we can look forward with clarity. Modern society had, he said, rubbished the examination of conscience, so essential to self-awareness. The same observation applied to societies, said Jamieson, and in this respect, a remark by the philosopher Roger Scruton, who died in 2020, comes to mind. We in Britain are entering a dangerous social condition in which the direct expression of opinions that conflict or merely seem to conflict with a narrow set of orthodoxies is instantly punished by a band of self-appointed vigilantes. We are being cowed into abject conformity around a dubious set of official doctrines and told to adopt a worldview that we cannot examine for fear of being publicly humiliated by the censors. Scruton himself was attacked for a supposed infringement of those fashionable rules and defended himself vigorously. I would say that the concept of free thought and speech is a primary Unitarian value. But suppose that position were to conflict with our concern for a more compassionate world, leading us to the position of opposing any free speech which could be regarded by someone else as offensive. Would that be consistent with our values? Our last hymn is Charles Hubert Parry's famous setting of William Blake's poem, "And Did Those Feet in Ancient Time." Blake drew on a legend, in part supported in Milton's History of Britain, that Jesus and Joseph of Arimathea travelled to Britain to convert its Celtic population. There is a deal of complicated scriptural allusion in the poem, which need not detain us here. From our point of view, it is interesting because of its similarity both to Clare's position, despair at a lost paradise, now besmirched by dark satanic mills, and to Lingwood's position in its aspiration for a new Jerusalem. This holy city has often been understood by all three monotheist faiths as a symbol for paradise. Hymn number 210, Jerusalem.
Walk upon England's mountains green, and was the holy Lamb of God on England's pleasant pastures seen, and in their countenance divine shine forth upon the clouded hills, and was Jerusalem builded here among these oxytanic mills. Bring me my lamp of burning gold, bring me my arrows of desire, bring me my spear, O forth, bring me my chariot of fire. I will not cease from mortal fight, nor shall my work sleep in my hand, till we have entered Jerusalem, in England's green and pleasant land.
Splendid hymn, that, isn't it? And now may the peace of God, which passeth all understanding, keep your hearts and minds in the knowledge and love of the divine, and guide us in all our dealings in the new year.